My name is Alex, and I am an associate of MAP. Tonight we'll be hearing from Elsita Meyer-Brandt, who is a senior manager at Eventbrite and also is head of their international expansion. Elsita will be discussing what it takes to take your startup abroad. I would like to introduce Elsita.
Thank you. Hi everyone, thanks for having me tonight. We're very excited to be here in Australia. For those of you that don't know, Eventbrite just opened an office in Melbourne. We opened our headquarters here. We moved in with 99 Designs, another really cool startup and good friends of ours. So we're down in Richmond now. We're building up a team. We're hiring. I'll talk a bit more about that later. We're 320 people now worldwide. We have a headquarters in San Francisco. Company got founded in 2006. Since then, we've grown to a pretty significant amount of tickets that were sold over our platform. So we processed 170 million tickets as of today. We crossed the $2 billion ticket volume last year. In Australia alone, we ticketed 75,000 events so far, and 3 million tickets went through the platform here in Australia without us doing anything but just launching the website. And because we saw so much volume, we wanted to come into the market, really build up an office here and cater to the bigger organizers, but also bring out the message about Eventbrite and educate the market about the company. So that's why we're here. As I mentioned, so I'm working on the international side for Eventbrite. I help the company expand into new markets. As you might be able to tell from my accent, I'm German. I'm in San Francisco since 4 years now. I did my MBA at the Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley and then got recruited by Eventbrite during my internship and stayed ever since. I want to talk to you about how to bring your startup abroad. And yes, Eventbrite is pretty big by now, but we still consider ourselves a startup. Our mentality is very startup driven. I don't know if any one of you was at the Startup Grind event we hosted when our founders were here, but they're really still down to earth and relatively, yeah, we're still kind of working as a startup. So there are a lot of things that we learned during the process of going international. And it's not that long ago that we started to get really strategic about it. And there are a lot of learnings that we made over the past months that I would like to share with you tonight. So first of all, the question, why should you even go international? And when you want to go international, how do you do it? I think going international, and being lucky when going international or successful is all about preparation and opportunity. And I'll talk about opportunity first because it's a bit easier to explain. But for Eventbrite, opportunity was really looking at our internal numbers. We've been, without really having done anything, we've seen that 20% of our business came from international. We were being used in 179 countries without having platforms in any other country but the US. And we got about 25% of our total page views from international. So that really showed us that there was a high demand for Eventbrite in other markets outside of the US, and that got us really interested in looking more into that. So what we did is we launched in 20 countries. We have 9 languages by now, and we support 24 currencies. Part of that is also due to an acquisition that we made in Argentina. We acquired a company called Eventios that is also active in Brazil, Chile, Colombia. And so, there were a few countries added through acquisition, but the rest of them we launched. So we launched the websites. We support the language and we support the currency, but the question is, what then? Right? Just launching the website doesn't make you an international company, doesn't mean you're in the market like we were in Australia. And so that's where preparation really comes into the play. First of all, the question is, how do you choose a market? And I believe from what we've done and what we've looked in, we've really learned it's about 4 things. It's the market opportunity. So how big is the market? How big of a volume is in that market? It's about a product market fit. Is your product ready for that market? Is it accepted in the market? And does it make sense with the local requirements and the local culture? Then it's about performance, meaning what I just mentioned, 20% of our business already came from international. So we were looking into how much came from each country and what was the traction we already had in the different markets. And the last one is competitive analysis. So you really have to check where competitors popping up in which markets. You don't want to wait in markets that are being highly competitive, where a lot of competitors are coming up that are doing similar stuff. You want to go in now, and you don't want to wait until someone establishes themselves as a big player. So for example, Etsy, I don't know if you're aware, if you know Etsy very well, but they expanded into Germany and they expanded pretty late, and by then there was a local player called Davanda, which is now totally dominating the market, and it's really hard for Etsy to get in. Same with Yelp, who had to face a pretty big competitor there, so they just acquired it. But it's pretty expensive to acquire a company, so you want to be there first, right? So when we look at countries at Eventbrite, and this is how we do it, so I don't say that's the way to go, but it's a model that worked really well for us. We divide countries into different groups. And this is not our market, so those are not our countries that we look at. It's just an example because I can't share all the detailed international strategy, but this explains pretty well what we mean. And so the idea is to look at your performance of your business. So this is time and this is adoption. And so you see the three different buckets: core, expansion, and everywhere else. And core is your core market. So where does the majority of your business come from? Or said differently, if you would take that market out of your balance sheet, you would really feel that, because it would basically take out 20, 50, 90% of your business. So I assume that for a lot of you guys starting your companies here in Australia, your core market is Australia. Then you have expansion markets. And expansion markets are split into two phases. The idea behind this is that you have some markets like New Zealand that you already have a great product market fit. You know, you're in there, you have the language, you have the currency, and it's really about expanding in that market. So building up a presence, building up a sales team, building up a marketing team. And expansion one markets, phase one, are markets where they have a lot of potential, you want to expand into them, but your product is maybe not quite there yet. So you're missing a payment method, you're missing the currency, there's something you still have to change to move that country into phase two so that you can really put resources in there and grow the market. And then you have everywhere else. And everywhere else are all the other amazing markets you want to be in, but you really have to focus on a few in the beginning to expand into. And while you should look at them and monitor their development and their growth, you can't focus on them right now. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll leave time in the end, but if you have any questions now, just shout in. So Eventbrite built this model. We looked into the different markets, we put them along the axis and looked what are the markets that we want to expand into now. And once we've decided which one was our expansion market, we're to think about how do we enter, right? And Eventbrite has an office in the UK, we have our headquarters in San Francisco, we have a guy in Germany, we have a few people in Ireland, we tried some stuff in France, we tried some stuff in the Netherlands, but we didn't have one coherent strategy, but every country was like trying something else and doing something else. And so we wanted to come up with a strategy that actually allowed us to have one approach, the Eventbrite approach of going into new markets. And so we built what we call the International Playbook, which is a handbook of how you go into new markets. And the playbook, creating the playbook, was something I worked on last year, and it was a truly cross-functional effort working with all the different departments of the company. So working with HR, working with the product team, working with marketing, with finance, WeRock as our support team, with sales and engineering, and figuring out all the different stuff that you have to take into consideration to build a very cohesive approach to enter a new market. And so the topics covered in the playbook are market understanding. So what data should you look at before you enter a new market? And there are tons of data that you should look at internally, dependent on the type of business you have. So for us, it was revenues, it was number of new users, it was number of tickets sold, it was free tickets versus paid tickets, all of these different things. And then we look at external data. So what's the market size? What's the culture? What are the different categories? How big are they? What are certain regulations that we should be aware of? What are the key payment methods? So it's a lot of market understanding. And once you understood the market, the next step is to understand if you have a product market fit. So one market we tried to expand into last year, the year before, was Germany. And we thought, oh, let's just do it. You know, we have PayPal with credit card, works in the US for 300 million people, so it should work in Germany for 80 million. Doesn't work because Germans don't use credit card. Maybe 5 to 10% have a credit card. So it doesn't work there, but they have very particular Germany-specific payment methods that we didn't have on our platform. And so the product got a lot of traction, but not the traction we really wanted to see. So we didn't have a product market fit. So it's really important to be aware of that now, because if you pump a lot of money into the market to do marketing and sales and you don't have a product market fit, it's like trying to sell someone a car that rides a bicycle, or you sell a car without wheels. So that doesn't work, right? And then once you determine you have a product market fit, or you build the product to a point where you have a fit, it's about setting the foundation. So really understanding what are the legal requirements, what are the tax requirements, what are the localization requests. And that's part of localization is translation, but a lot of that is formats. So date, currency, how do they show the time, like all of these things that you have to think of early on. And I highly recommend, if you think about going international, that's actually something you should think about now when you build the foundation, when you do all the coding in the very beginning, because you want to include these things early on and not rework your entire system once you're at the point to go international. And then it's about the market entry strategy. So once you have all these things, how do you actually go into the market? Who do you send first? Do you start with marketing, or do you start with sales, or do you start with both at the same time? You want to know about pricing. Is your price right? Should you do a special offer? Should you adapt your pricing? It's about understanding the culture, the type of campaigns you want to run. The hiring questions, like what's the average salary? We came here to Australia, and I had a salary in my mind when I did the recruiting, and people were asking me for twice the amount. I was like, are you guys all crazy? And then we went back and did more research on it, and it's actually a bit different here how they pay certain people. So you should know these things before you go. And then obviously the launch. So what do you do on your first months on the ground? The first few months are so important because they really set the foundation. They're really important in terms of, externally, that you really want to make a big buzz around your launch. And if you mess it up in the beginning, it's really hard to revert that. It's really hard to turn things around. So if you launch in the market with a shitty message or a shitty product, or you do something really wrong, or you have some words in your language that in that local language totally assault people, it's really hard to take that image back out of the market. So you want to do it right, and you want to know how to do it right. It's also really important from an internal perspective. So at Eventbrite, when we launched here in Australia last month, I brought the founders over here for a week. We hosted a ton of events with them. They spoke at events. We hosted dinners where we met with organizers that were all so excited about Eventbrite. I came 2 weeks earlier to meet all of these organizers and get them really excited before I put them in the room with the founders. And then they told them how much they loved Eventbrite. And our founders were like, wow, everyone here loves Eventbrite. And I'm like, sure, because we told them before to tell you that. But so they went back to the States, and they were so excited about Australia, and they told everyone what a huge opportunity and how amazing Australia. And now we're getting so many resources from headquarters in terms of product, in terms of engineering, in terms of finance. So it's really, really important to get your people on board. So that's a playbook. The next step, once you developed your playbook, the playbook is a book. So like every other book, it's very theoretical. So the question is, when I wrote the playbook together with our company, and we had this written document, in our case it was a PowerPoint presentation, the question was, is this really the right approach? And we didn't know because it's theoretical. So what we decided to do is use a test market. So launch in a market that is big enough to get relevant results, but small enough that if you do it wrong, you're not messing up your biggest opportunity out there. So I didn't want to launch in Germany with that playbook, but we chose Ireland, which was a strategically important market to us, but at the same time it was relevant because we had a product market fit there. We had a very strong product penetration there already, so we knew our product worked. It's a very small population, so Ireland is about the size of New Zealand, not even 5 million inhabitants, and it has a very high population density, which is very important for events, because events happen where a lot of people are, and 25% of the population lives in Dublin, but it's also for your products and for your marketing communication. Imagine, I tell something to someone in Dublin, very quickly this will go around, everyone knows. Now imagine you're somewhere in New Zealand where you're surrounded by sheep and you tell them something, it's really hard to get the word out. But if you go to Auckland, where a majority of the people are, and you tell a message, it will get out there quickly, and that's what you want. You want very quick test results, so you can learn very quickly and pivot very quickly into new areas. So I just picked New Zealand because I thought for a lot of you this might be interesting. I think New Zealand is a very attractive market for you to test stuff in because it's very close by. It has a very highly dense population in Auckland, same language, so that's very easy, and there are only few adaptations you have to make in order to launch the product there. So you can test your playbook, or you can test your international approach there. And so the first test I did when we ran the playbook, and we really tested thing by thing in the playbook, my key learnings were timing, so really start early and be ready on time. When we launched in Ireland, we kind of took that decision very quickly that that's the first market we want to launch in. We decided that late December. I had about 2 or 3 weeks to do the analysis, and then I went to Ireland, hired a team. 1 week later, we did our first event. We threw out all the marketing activities and just went crazy. And it all happened in 4 weeks, but it was pretty intense. I wish I would have hired the team first and actually planned the launch with them. And so that's what we wanted to do in Australia, but it's really hard to find a team. Recruiting takes a lot of time. We're here in the market since a month, and the first employee we have is Kelly, who's sitting over here. But we have 4 open positions right now that we're hiring for. So it takes a lot of time, so make sure you calculate that into your plan and also into the numbers that you're expecting over the next months. Being local matters. So it's really important to have local staff. When I come and I sell something, people are like, oh yeah, she's nice, but I'm German or I'm American or whatever they think, but I'm not local. I don't get your culture 100%. I don't know the slang you use. I don't know the little things about, how events really work here. I can learn a lot of that, but it's just different if you have someone, someone local telling you, selling the product. The other thing is continuous in-market presence is key. So it doesn't make sense for you to launch someone into the market, have them there 2 weeks, and they go back to your headquarters, they work a bit there, they go back. Being local is really key, and being there is key because people will have questions and they will come back to you and they want to meet you and they want to talk to you. And you want to build up relationships. And it's like a real relationship with your boyfriend or your girlfriend. It's really hard to build up a relationship if you see each other like once a month. But you want to see each other every day, right? And so it's really important to commit to the market and be there. The next point is to stay focused. So for Eventbrite, we currently ticket events in all different categories. We do sports events, music events, politic events, fundraisers, business events, these type of events. Like we do everything. And I come to Australia, I come to a new market, and I want to do everything. But if you spread yourself too thin, your marketing efforts and your sales efforts are not going to be effective. So for us, it was really key to say, we're focusing on this event category and on that event category, and that's all we're going to do. That's what we're going to market to, that's what we're going to sell into. And once we dominate these 2 areas, we're going to expand into the next one. And it totally depends on your type of business, but serving a smaller group in the beginning, but serving them well and then growing out of there is much more efficient. Hire local, I already mentioned that. I mean, that's kind of the being local thing, but it's also people really take you serious and take serious that you really want to be in the market if you start hiring local. The governments are very interested in you building up local workforce. They want you to hire a team there. And we got feedback a lot from the organizers that say, we love your team, but we would love to have someone here from Australia to meet every day, to talk to. So it was a big learning for us. We didn't think that was that important, but the last thing is to bring your experts. So it's important to have a local team, but you want to mix them with someone from your headquarters or someone who really, really knows your product. And while I was building the plan for Australia, I talked a lot to people at Uber, at Dropbox, at Etsy, at AdRoll, at all these different tech companies that expanded into Australia or other markets recently, Yelp, one of them. And all of them said, we're sending someone from headquarters. We're sending someone over here for 3 months, 6 months, a year to help build up the team. And so we decided to do the same thing because Eventbrite has a really strong company culture, and it's really important for us that this company culture exists here in Australia as well. And we want the team from the beginning on to work like Brightlings, as we call ourselves. And the other thing is there's a ton of information in the headquarters. We have our finance team there, we have our HR team there, we have all the engineers in San Francisco. And if you need something here, you need to know who to reach out to. So if you build up a team in a new market and you only have new people there, they don't know whom to talk to in your team. I mean, it depends on the size of your startup, but at Eventbrite, we're 300 people, and Kelly doesn't know yet who to reach out to, right? So it's great for her to have someone here who can tell her, if you need this, go to this and that person. So those were the key learnings that we made. And so once you did this, once you did your first test run in whichever test market you picked that makes sense for you, then it's the time to go into the next market. So in this case, for you guys, it could be the UK. Market about 15 times as big as New Zealand. So when you go into that market, you want to do it right. You want to move that market into phase 2 by making sure you have the right product, you have the right currency and everything I mentioned before. and then you want to expand in that market. And it's really important that you have these test runs before and that you made these learnings before in order to do it right in the markets that are really big and that are really significant to your business. Another thing that's also helpful besides besides testing yourself is talking to people. So I mentioned I spoke to tons of different people that work in the international department, and it's really helpful to hear how others are doing it. And there's a lot of learnings you can get out of that. So Eventbrite, as I mentioned, we launched in Ireland beginning of this year. We're in Australia right now. We have 2 more markets to come this year. And in the end, we really want to get all over the world. I don't know if we're going to have offices everywhere, but we want to penetrate every market and be in every market. And the idea behind the playbook is really that by testing this approach and becoming better at it every time, we can get much more efficient and launch quicker and launch faster and launch more successfully. So that's the idea behind it. It's all a big learning process and just becoming much better at what you're doing. So I believe at Eventbrite, but also for a lot of other companies out there, the future is really international. If you want to bring your business to a significant size, you have to expand out of your country. And if you take 4 key learnings away from tonight, I think the most important one is really apply your key learnings to your new market. So don't make the same mistakes twice. And it helps to write it down, and it helps to have your guideline of how to expand. The second one is to share best practices. Share them with other people, share them with other companies, but also share them internally. Make sure you connect people that work for you in different markets. Make sure they talk to each other. Make sure you have a monthly call where every country manager talks about what they did last month, what worked well, what didn't. I'm in constant contact with the Irish team to understand what are the activities we kicked off that really worked well, what are things that we did that maybe were a waste of time or we shouldn't have done. Follow a laser-focused approach. I think that's something you hear all the time when you talk to VCs, when you talk to anyone who's helping you on your startup. They will always say, be focused. And it's the same thing when you go international. It's really about focusing on a few things and doing them right. Don't try to penetrate the entire market at the same time, but pick a segment and grow from there. And then look out for new opportunities and really follow your clients. So the first thing you should analyze when you think about going international is your own data. Look where your customers are. Look where your users are coming from. Look if the behavior is different in different markets. We have some markets where we have a very high penetration of free events, very small penetration of paid events. So either paid events are not that big there, or we're doing something wrong when it comes to converting free to paid, which could be payment methods, right? So there's a lot to learn when you look at your internal data, and it's much easier to launch in a market where you have big traction than to launch in a market where no one has ever heard of you. And even when you once decided you go into a market, so for example, Germany, the next step I did is I looked into the city penetration. So which city in Germany or which city in Australia, I did the same thing here, which city is the strongest in terms of number of events already happening, tickets sold, revenues, and all of that. And then I picked the city where we have the strongest penetration in, because even though it's the strongest for us, it's still tiny compared to the volume that's in that market. Yeah, so those are like the key learnings that I would give you, and I'm opening up for questions now.